victims of domestic abuse. We're looking for volunteers um, would love to help us out. Completely voluntary. No, we won't get anything in return other than um, altruism. My mascot, Azu, right here, she will be appearing across the PowerPoint presentation to help me keep this presentation engaging. She will react to stuff and so on and so forth. She is also the basis for Toshan Alter. So if you've seen Toshan Alter, I'm not sure if they used her in a while in Toshan, but she's also the basis of her. I'm on Twitch, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. Soon to be on TikTok because I lost a bit. Under Saber Chalice. Anyway, that's short thing about me. Let's get on with the meat of our discussion.
Sorry to interrupt.
Yeah.
Could you go back a bit? The audio died for a bit on the stream. Can
Oh,
you
okay.
just give a bit of a refresh on the previous slide?
Which one? The title slide or about me?
About you, just real quick, really.
Okay. Uh,
Sorry.
I
Thank you. Sorry. Just quick. Sorry. Sorry for
Okay.
the scuff.
I am on Twitch, Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. My name is Saber Chalice. That is my streamer and gamer tag. Uh, I stream variety games. I'm a cosplayer too. You can see some of the cosplays I have done over time. My mascot, Azu, has been the basis, as well as myself, has been the basis of Toshin Alter. I am not sure if Toshin has used her recently in anything, but if you see her, that she's actually my mascot. I think that's it. Okay. Um, what we'll discuss today, because we have 1 hour, is an introduction of this course, introduction of anime and manga history, Western influences in anime. Exam we'll have an example exercise, character design based on hair, character design on clothes, and we'll have an exercise for the audience. I will breeze through a lot of these things. Note to anyone watching, I'm not the type of presenter, instructor, lecturer who puts a lot of text in slides. So you might as well just pay attention, and I'll try to explain it with pictures. Azu, as you can see down here on the bottom left, she will help me out explaining a lot of these things with her reaction. So anyway, let's move on. Let's go first. First off, introduction short anime, manga. These are just definitions so people would get it. Obviously, everyone knows, but just to put it down because we're going to be constantly going back to them. Anime are hand drawn and computer generated animation originating from Japan. And in Japan, anime describes all animated works, regardless of style of or origin. So here in outside Japan, we would say anything from Japan that's animated would be anime. But in Japan, if they were to watch, let's say, cartoons like Adventure Time, Teen Titans Go, and so on and so forth, that's actually anime to them. Manga um, are any comics or graphic novels originating from Japan. In Japan, the term refers to both comics and cartooning. We'll have very great fun facts later. For example, did you know that the world's first comics actually came from Japan, like the comic books? We'll get to that later. So, uh, have a happy course introduction. Um, Basically, what I'm teaching and what I'm presenting right now is basically a former class taught by the Fine Arts Department. This is FA 174.11. I have just adjusted it because I'm a historian. I graduated with a degree in history. So I'm going to focus a lot on the history of anime manga and a lot of the things that will appear, like the historical value or the historical origin of it, um, as opposed to shading, adjust, panel setting, and stuff like that. I will not understand. I'm sorry, I do understand. I will not try to explain or make you understand the how good it is or how like, oh, look, the symmetry, or look, that's a nice shading, or like they use this to emphasize the eyes, the stuff like that. I won't really explain that. I will explain the rationale behind it in terms of philosophy and history. All right. So when we talk about manga, people would say the origin of manga would have been in 1798. It was one of the works of Santo Kyoden. It's the Shinji no Yukikai. But no one would really consider manga until 1814, uh, the manga Hyakujo of Aikawa Minwa. Along around the same time, which is a more popular first manga that people would say would be the first manga, and also named this person the father of manga, would be Hokusai. So there are 15 volumes of Hokusai manga. It ran 1814 to 1878. A lot of these would be pretty much the basis of manga. But there are some people who would say, which is highly debated upon, in the 12th or 12th to 13th centuries, that's a typo on my end. I got confused there. In the around the 12th or 13th centuries, there were scrolls that were found that Shoju Jinbutsu Giga, which is something akin to fables, like picture stories of animals doing animal stuff. I would like to point out that around this time, and around all time really, that manga or scrolls and so on that are found in Japan around this time were things that they normally saw around themselves. Influences from the West or other countries did not appear until much, much later, which we will get to. There has been yeah, actually I'll get to that later. Also on the 12th century was the Tobo E, made by Tobo Sojo. These were actually considered the first comic books. Oh wait, no, they're not. Wait, sorry, the delays actually messed my flow. Anyway, Toba E by Tobo Sojo. This is around the 12th century. This is also one of the first things people would consider manga, but not manga. By the way, Toba Sojo, it's pronounced the same way like Han Sojo. Han Solo's dad. Yeah, she doesn't like that. Anyway, the Kibyoushi on the Edo period, Adam L. Kern believed these were the first comic books in the whole world. People hate me for that joke. Anyway, first comic books in the whole entire world. Like this style of Japanese picture books. This style of picture books have only been found in Japan and not anywhere else in the world. So you could actually give a very fun tidbit that the Kibyoushi during the Edo period was the first comic books in the entire world. You wouldn't really say it would be Captain America, Spider-Man, Superman, but it's actually Kibyoushi during the Edo period. Good fun fact. Now, writers on manga history have described two broad and complementary processes in shaping modern manga. One view represented by writers such as Frederick L. Schott, the guy on the left, that's his book, The World of Japanese Comics. Kinko Ito, Dr. Kinko Ito, on the right, she actually does a lot of manga comic reviews, especially for women. And Adam L. Kern stressed the continuity, the guy in the center. Now that I think about it, I should have picked a more flattering photo than him having lunch. Anyway, Adam L. Kern stressed the continuity of cultural and aesthetic traditions, including pre-war Meiji and pre-Meiji culture and art. And there's the other view, which emphasizes events occurring during and after the Allied occupation of Japan 1945 to 1952, and stresses U.S. cultural influences, including U.S. comics, images, and themes from U.S. television, film, and cartoons. One of the people who would promote this idea would be Dr. Sharon Kinsella. Now, when it hit the 1960s, that's when we know that's the modern manga we know today. It all started with Astro Boy and The Wonderful World of Sazae-san. You can actually see down here for 50 years, it's been the best loved comic strip. So much so that when the anime adaptation came for The Wonderful World of Sazae-san, did you know that it actually had the most Japanese viewers of the year of 2011? The year 2011 for the younglings in the in the audience today were these were the animes that were present during the time: Steins Gate, Blood Sea, Blue Exorcist, Nichijou, Fate Zero, Yu-Gi-Oh! Zexal, Anohana, and Modoka Magica. So, while a lot of these are not constantly talked about, they still had a large impact, and Sazai was able to beat them all with its anime adaptation. I went back to this because I want to also talk about Astro Boy. When Astro Boy came out, it was revolutionary and it became popular even abroad, the foreign market, because the reason, yeah, you know what? I'll get to that later. But the how it got popular was the cinematography used, was the whole concept of something like this, something that looked Western but was Japanese. We'll get to that later. The first anime, some would argue, would be the Katsuto Shash, 1907, or aka the Matsumoto Fragment. This means motion picture, and no one knows who made it or who it's for, what's its purpose. The Katsuto Shashi was actually a private work done with influences from China, Russia, Germany, riding along with the Meiji Restoration, with opening up of Japan to the rest of the world. Anime only became something public a few years later in around the 1910s, especially the most oldest, that's double superlative, the oldest and most surviving piece of anime during that time was Junichi Kochi's The Dull Blade, released in 1917. Here's a still from it. Now, Junichi Kochi, along with Oten Shimokawa, Seito Kitayama, were known as the fathers, that is wrong grammar, fathers of anime. Just gonna get some. Now you're wondering, why haven't we heard of this? Fathers of anime, but we don't even know these anime. The Dull Blade, what's that? What's the Matsumoto Fright? Why don't we watch anything around this time period? Why do we only know Astro Boy, which came many, many years later? Here's the thing. They had big competition, and it was not from Japan. Something in the Western world was taking the animation world, say genre, by storm. And it was this company right here, Disney. Disney in the 1930s was a powerhouse. Moving on to the 1940s, 50s, 60s onwards, until today, Disney kind of owns everything. So you wouldn't hear about the Dull Blade, but you would know about Steamboat Willie or Fantasia, Snow White. Japanese animators during the time, um, at first they felt kind of like everything's fine. Eventually, it became, especially during the Second World War, became not so well, not so great for them. Yeah, but thanks to Astro Boy and every succeeding anime after that, during that came before, Princess Mononoke, Voltus 5, Yu Yu Hakusho, Sailor Moon, Lupin the Third, all those animes in the years following the 1960s to the 2000s started to gain traction enough that I dare say is as popular as Disney because people know anime today as much as they know Disney cartoons and animation. That's I probably say it's like a 60-40. Disney kind of beats anime by a little margin, but anime is almost a household name. A lot of series, Naruto, Full Metal Alchemist, right? Um, More recent ones, Spy Family, sorry, Spy Family, Hunter x Hunter, JoJo, uh, anime-esque games, Fake Grand Order, Genshin Impact, even VTubers. People would call it that, would recognize it as anime, even if it isn't. VTubers. People know anime now, and it's all thanks to, say, Astro Boy. And anime became so popular that there are some things in anime that has carried over to the Western world. One such is the Akira slide. Um, I'm pretty sure I don't need to explain. Looking at that picture, you all know what the Akira slide is. You can find this in the 2002 Clone Wars. This is when Obi-Wan was jousting on his speeder. Batman the animated series, Batman had to, yeah. X-Men Origins Wolverine, when the whole barn chase explosion scene, Wolverine did that with his motorbike. Adventure Time, Marceline did it when she was Feral State. And in the 2003 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles opening, uh, Raphael was pulled it off. And I don't think they did it in the show. That was only in the opening. I was gonna sing this, but I actually don't feel too confident. I'm not really have a good voice. But the old Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles opening, the one that goes, I love being a turtle. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, 1, 2, 3, 4, that one. Other now there have been Western influences in anime. Some are blatantly obvious. Psychopaths, Black Lagoon, Trigun, Cowboy Bebop. A lot of these happen to be very Western cowboy-esque. Um, Sidetrack. Did you know that there are the Western weeb equivalent in Japan, but they're called what do you call 'em? I forgot what the term is, but what these Japanese people do is they dress up as cowboys. It's pretty amusing, and I see at least culture goes both ways, and it's really really fun. Another blatantly obvious one is um, in the first ending of Fate Zero, called Memoria. You can see that they copied actual paintings. The one for Gilgamesh, which is not illustrated here, is actually from a statue. Um, and recreated it into anime versions. Okay, so a short little thing I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna preview our little our two exercises that we'll do in a bit, and I will do it with one of these paintings. The top right painting you can see here, that is called The Entry of Alexander in Babylon by Charles Lebrun. This was an oil on canvas painting made from 1661 to 1665. You can view this painting in the Louvre Museum in Paris, France. Uh, Takashi, the artist of Fate, had this version found in the Fate Zero ending, this one, the one at the bottom. Iskander expected to see the character, Alexander the Great, the guy in the red hair and the red cape, expected to see a battle at Babylon when he came, but he was actually greeted a hero's welcome. So what I'm gonna do right now is I'm gonna break up the painting and the anime portrait at the same time, so you guys can get an idea what we're gonna do in a bit. So if you notice, there is an elephant in the painting. There historically, Iskander probably did not ride an elephant to Babylon because uh he only used a lot of elephants during his Indian campaign, and when he did get some from Africa, but it wasn't that he'd actually use it as a mount. So the elephant here is a symbol of power, a symbol of dignity, strength, loyalty, and peace. These can attribute to Alexander the Great's personality and character. So the addition of the elephant actually accentuates Alexander's character and ambition. The power and strength of his armies are also represented by the elephant, their loyalty too. He would often remark in history, in fictional texts about him, in the anime, the manga, the novel, that how loyalty and the bonds of his soldiers is what got him this far. The elephant would also symbolize the peaceful entry that he had into Babylon, where people were um, praising his entrance. When I mentioned that he didn't use any elephants until the his Indian campaign, did you know that in India, elephants often represent something divine? Like if you know Ganesha, the elephant head, that's an example. The elephant here also shows Alexander's divinity. Alexander's mother would often comment about Alexander being the son of Zeus. Um, it's one of those Zeus was, feeling like it, turned into a snake, and you know the story. It was this divinity that made Alexander feel so invincible. That's why he has never lost a single battle in his life. That's and yeah, never lost a single battle in his life. You can actually check that. So yeah, that one thing I pulled out of the painting and the anime still is what we're gonna keep doing throughout the rest of the presentation because I'm done with the boring history part and the boring part that everyone wants to uh, get by. So we're gonna do more hands-on, more the meat of this discussion. Oh, that's so. Okay. When this class was being taught by my professor in Ateneo, his name was Chris Cuevas. He would introduce what I just did to you with this image from One Piece, this manga still from One Piece. And I'd like people, just 1 minute, to do you notice anything here that does not appear very Japanese? I mean, obviously, but because One Piece is a Japanese manga, can you tell me parts that would stand out to you that doesn't really feel Japanese? You guys can put it in the comments of the Zoom meeting. Uh, you can do this for a minute. Just browse it. I'll try opening the Zoom, the Twitch, sorry, the Twitch, and let's see if was comments, and maybe we can tackle those two. One second. Oh shit. Let's see. Yeah. Just feel free to comment if or add to the chat if no one if no one does, then I'll discuss it. Vice na orange hair. Sure. Okay, we can tackle that later. Yeah. Not details about characters, hairstyle. Um, I mean, sure. We can tackle that later. I have a whole segment on that. But this activity is for things, items, things that grasp your attention. Objects. Yeah, I'll just give it a minute. And we'll continue with no a little exercise for people. And then we have a bigger exercise later. This is just one that has a lot of things that you guys can notice. Don't worry, I'll be the one to explain a lot of them. Watermelon, wine interest, yes, yes, yes. Can't see the chat. Well, okay. Uh, yeah, since we have 1 hour only, we'll just continue later. Okay. So, yeah, watermelons. Uh, Hawaiian shirts. Let's start with Hawaiian shirts. Um, it's also known as the karushi shirt, kari yushi shirt. Uh, Obviously, that is clearly put on Twitch. I can't see the Twitch chat. Oh, wait, hold on. Wait, people are saying something on Twitch. One sec, I will just. I can't see the Twitch chat. All I can think of. Ah, okay, okay. Anyway, uh, let's go with the Hawaiian shirts first. All right. The Kariushi shirt was introduced in Japan in the 1970s. It was to promote tourism in Okinawa. That's why a lot of anime that appears in Okinawa, for example, like Blood Plus, you would see people having Hawaiian shirts, which is actually Kariushi shirt, their version of the Hawaiian shirt. And then yeah, it gained popularity into 2000s because a lot of advertisements, tourism lines, anime started using these Kariushi shirts to promote to promote tourism in Japan and especially Okinawa and to show that they are in Okinawa. Like if you see someone, you see an anime character usually in a Hawaiian shirt or a Kariushi shirt, and you know they're still in Japan, most likely they are in Okinawa. It is something that is very, very distinct. Next, you mentioned watermelons. Watermelons are not native to Japan. Watermelons actually were introduced in the Edo period, that's 1603 to 1867, and they were imported from China. And they also, I don't think, come from China. I feel like they were from, they're still an old world fruit, but because I think they're an African fruit that just so happened to be transferred over time by our human ancestors to trade, to travels. Eventually, it can become a worldwide fruit. And then in the 1930s, that's when seedless watermelons were invented, also in Japan. And Japan is also known for their square or star watermelons. So watermelons do stand out, and they actually have quite a history. Another thing that would see that's not Japanese are bikinis. Bikinis were invented in France by Louis Rerd in 1946, and since then they have been appearing a lot in anime, usually for either fan service or during beach episodes. Yes, Louis Rerd is French. Now, the electric fan, also seen there, it was invented in 1886 by Dr. Schiller Wheeler, and the first one was released in New York. So this is also another Western invention. It's something that we usually don't think about because here in the Philippines we have a lot of electric fans, and I feel like the brands are usually um, Japanese brands like Hanabishi and so on and so forth, right? I'm actually reading the chats now because I know there I can actually read chats. Um, Another thing that would be eye catching, but this one is from Japan, is you see at the back bug catching. Usually, when you hear bug catching, you usually find that in Japan and in Japanese media. Right here, um, people who play Pokemon in the audience would know very well that there are a lot of bug catchers, bug catcher type trainers, because it's a popular thing in Japan. If you want to know the origin of that, because the ancient Japanese would capture bell crickets. Uh, I don't have a picture here, but you can Google it. Bell crickets. They would capture these bell crickets and put them in jars or in containers because what we Western people would hear from bugs and other insects is noise, something we hear with our right brain. However, the Japanese, when they hear insect, it's like language. They hear it with their left portion of the brain. That's another thing why they love catching bell crickets, which eventually evolved into a pastime to capture any type of bug, usually beetles, in Japan. It's a very beautiful concept, and I like everyone to 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 yeah, bug catchers in virgin forest to actually look that up. It's a wonderful thing that they don't hear noise; they actually hear language, and that's how their brain processes the language bugs, and that's why they catch them. Another thing that you can see here are what do you call the afro hair right at the right bottom. Afro hairstyle came and originated from the United States. It was during the civil movement in the 1960s. It's supposed to show empowerment, rebellion, standing up, you know, that kind of thing. I just don't remember the political correct term. But for African Americans, like very empowering for them. That's why they have Afro hairstyle, and it um transferred to popular media. Also, you can see on the bug catcher is a tank top. Um, if you want to know where the tank top or the sleeveless shirts come from, it came from the 1920s. And yeah, they're actually called sleeveless shirts, which eventually they adopted the term tank top because they look like tank suits. Tank suits are bathing suits, like the one piece that girls wear, a type of. That's why they call it a tank top because it looks like the tank suit. As Filipinos, we call it the sando. If you want to know why we call it sando, this is a tidbit for everyone in the audience. The reason why we call it a sando is based on there's some famous bodybuilder before. His name was Eugene Sando. Um, because bodybuilders would always wear tank tops. We kind of adopted the term sando from his last name because we see him wear. It's like photocopiers are called Xerox because we're so used to seeing the brand Xerox for a photocopier that any photocopier, even if it's not Xerox, is Xerox. It's like that. Seeing Eugene Sando wear his tank tops a lot made us eventually call tank tops sandos. So now you know. Like a little facts. You're learning something. You're learning something. Another thing that stands out are trunks, swimming trunks. The Americans call it bathing suits. Um, the origin of um, trunks, why they're called trunks, and actually came from the 16th or 17th century. They're actually in Europe. They're actually breachers that people just adopted to eventually, something comfortable. That's why when they go swimming, it's something like it looks like breachers and it looks like breachers, which were called trunks. So they became swimming trunks. But to avoid confusion, a lot of people just call them bathing suit, like the collective term of bikinis, one pieces, um, um, surfwear, swimming trunks, bathing suits. But that's another, fun fact for you guys. As you can see, there are a lot of things going on here that are not Japanese, but Japanese have incorporated into their media, something that will make the audience feel very like foreign audiences feel they can relate to. And modern Japan right now is really Western. Modern, modern audiences, even in Japan, would relate to them too. Another thing is towels. Towels is from Turkey, 17th century. So that's another thing. So while I was saying there's a lot of things Japan started, there's also a lot of things Japan got from the Western world, and those were a lot of things I mentioned earlier. Speaking of Afro, let's talk about hair. All right. I know someone mentioned hair color, but let's get to that later. Let's talk about hairstyle first, then we get to hair color. When you see anime characters, their hairstyle actually gives us a hint of what kind of character they are. Sorry, what kind of person they are, and it reveals their character. Yeah, that's it. Usually, characters with long. I'll only talk about females because male characters usually have the same look in anime, unless you're talking about like Yugimoto or like yeah. But let's talk about base real life hair. If you have long hair, that's all the way down. Kami will be our example. That is a normal look, and usually someone with that kind of hair is either two things: unnoticeable or very beautiful. Because it's such a normal hair, it brings out that normal look, the natural beauty of a person, or it makes them a background character, either of the two. Now, if you see a character who ties their hair in a ponytail, usually they're athletic, and there is some real life reasoning for that too. Don't want your hair bouncing around or getting in your face or getting you have to tie it. So call me in a PE episode in their physical exam episode. No, yeah, this is the physical exam. This isn't the intramurals. Ties her hair in a back when she's doing the exercises because having a ponytail usually says this character is active or this character is athletic. I still have time. Characters with twin tails. I'll speed this up because characters with twin tails are people who are very childish, immature. I used Rin because I kind of love Rin. So yeah. So Rin or any version of Rin, Ishtar, not real Ishtar, but Ishtar in her body, Ereshkigal. No, Ereshkigal has her hair down. Okay. Ishtar and Rin, they're very childish and immature, but Ereshkigal kind of copies that too. And it's evident in the hairstyle. Characters with short hair are often seen to be very rebellious, tomboyish. Kasa. Characters that show their forehead are usually characters who have lots of wealth or rich, kaguya-sama. Characters who have their hair in braids are often depicted as very mature characters. John the Arc. Not mature, yeah, mature personality wise. Like, yeah. And if you have an ahoge, the that usually means they're goofy, silly, or aloof. Um, let's talk about hair color. I'll speed this up because we have an activity after. Hair color actually has a very distinct impact on what type of character you have also. Um, there are so many hair colors, but I'll focus on yellow and red. Later is red. Yellow, Elric, Usagi, Naruto, and when they go Super Saiyan, it turns yellow. If you ever wonder the reason why a lot of main characters, a lot of famous main characters, have yellow blonde hair or golden hair, it's because there's a historical reasoning behind that. Um, Characters who have yellow hair are often very powerful. You ever notice? The historical reason is because during the Meiji Restoration, when Japan opened themselves up to the Western world, a lot of Westerners they saw have yellow hair, and they were technologically advanced. They blew them out of the water, literally. They blew them out of the water. So there's this fascination with something the less. So like yellow hair. But for a while, it kind of died down with Japanese imperialism all the way to the Second World War. But after their defeat and post-war, because there was also the Allied occupation of Japan. A lot of people occupying Japan were foreign or alien to them, Westerners that they were trying to fight, that overpowered them again, had blonde hair. So characters that have blonde hair, usually in anime, at least the older ones, reflect that Western superiority that some of the Japanese had in mind when they see a Westerner. That's why you had yeah, Naruto, Elric, Sailor Moon. Sometimes when Goku powers up, his hair turns yellow too. When he goes Super Saiyan, it's sometimes blue, but you get the point. If hair turns yellow, usually that means power. Power. Uh, I'll go through this shortly because I think we have around 15 minutes left. Uh, Now let's go to clothing. I put only one slide for this so I can go really quickly on it because I knew that I might talk too much on some topics. When a character wears a tank top, that anime character, usually is someone very powerful, someone strong, someone can handle themselves on their own, that they don't need that protection. It's shown in what they wear. So tank top, so like Revi. Characters like Kabataiji who wear hoodies, sweaters, or things that you do have about 15 minutes way off for things for Q&As instead. Okay. Okay, don't worry, I'll breeze through this. Like Kabataijin, uh, they're trying to be recluse, they're trying to hide themselves. That's what hoodies, sweaters, and things that make them hide. Go. Characters with a scarf. Um, Characters in a scarf usually say it's winter or fall season when it's still cold or pre-spring. But characters who also have scarves are usually mysterious. I don't know if anyone gets that reference, but are usually mysterious. Characters with hats, sun hats, are usually denote it's summer, but usually denote it's summer, but they also usually show the character is innocent. Characters with loose clothing, like Umaru over there, often show that because they're wearing loose clothing, it's like very relaxed. They're freeloaders or they're lazy. But not all the time, because someone can wear a casual clothing during a casual anime episode or in a slice of life shoujo, and it doesn't really necessarily mean they're lazy or. But it usually gives the aura of they're relaxed. Characters in dresses. There are usually two things, three, but I chose Euphemia as an example because she perfectly brings out two of the three. When someone wears a dress, usually they're very regal, they're very cute, or they have to do it because it's part of a setting, because she's a princess, she's royalty, or she's a noble. Euphemia being noble, royalty, covers one. Euphemia also being very elegant, yet actually, yeah, she actually no elegant, sometimes childish, sometimes. So actually fits actually all three, not two. Um, yeah. So there. What characters wear normally shows um that type of character, but there are some things that no, it's okay. Yeah, I mean there's another speaker after me, and anyway, yeah. Uh, sure there are other things that are made for like fan service or for to look to a cool factor, but those things are not as important as these things that actually give character rather than act as fan service or up the cool factor. So now we have an exercise. I have like 10 minutes left. We can do this for 5 minutes. Actually originally it was supposed to be a manga panel, but because the website that was hosting the manga panel kind of removed it, I had to get an anime scene, the anime equivalent of it. So everything's fine. So the exercise is if you recognize this scene from Fate Zero, everything I talked about, character clothing, hair, things in the background, if you guys can, put in the comments or in the chat what you think stands out and why it's used like that. That'd be great. Just put it in the chat, put it in the comments, put it in the yeah, and I'll read it, and then we'll have a discussion about it. But this is an exercise to get people thinking, to get people started. So this scene alone, and honestly, the timer starts now because we're running out of time. What stands out to you guys, and why do you think it's like that? Don't worry, I'll explain everything if you don't get it. But yeah, no, don't answer, don't ask questions. You you look at it. What stands out? Why is Gilgamesh's hair yellow? I was talking about yellow hair. Why is Gilgamesh's hair yellow? Explain it. Why is Arthuria's hair yellow? Explain it. Why is Gilgamesh's armor yellow? Gold. Why is Arthuria's armor blue? I didn't really give like the reasons behind the entire color wheel, but you guys can do it. There are four kings in the background, for example, three people, and then there's one that is visible. But if you guys know what language I'm talking about, you know, like there, Gilgamesh is strikingly handsome. God dang it! Yes, I know he's strikingly handsome. To preempt the QA later, I'll be posting link past assaults. Like okay, yeah. So yeah, Gilgamesh is striking. Everyone knows that. But yeah, yeah, um, yeah. 3 more minutes. You guys, just take it in. Take it in. Honestly, I could have actually started the entire talk with just this slide, but then I wanted to give you guys context. Um, we did this a lot in class, and it's a great exercise to see everything. That's why I showed you the One Piece panel earlier that my professor used and started talking things like that. So I started, showing you things that stand out. Then I started talking about meaning. Honestly, I wish I had more time. Like, I can talk about this for days, for hours, and I can let you guys really know. But I started tackling a few things. Human characters verified. Yeah, yeah. Uh, one more minute. No, he had 3 hour classes, not 4 hour classes. About the same. Yeah, it's 3 hours. It's once a week. 3 hours. Pretty fun. I nearly died to the audience. I nearly died going to his classes because like I actually wanted to go and I was running late. So the tricycle driver, there was a full tricycle. I had to sit in the back, and we were speeding off. He looked at me. Are you running late? Yes. All right. I'm dangling on the side because he just presses on the gas, and we're like, then he starts counterflowing. I'm going through traffic. a, a truck just goes like that to my face. Yeah, it's really funny. Yeah, yeah, that's one. Good job. Okay, that's the activity time. Yeah, time goes fast. Okay, and I had a short story in between. Okay, so I'll like to point out a lot of things that you have here. Um, let's talk about hair color. I'll talk about things that we know and then things we don't know. I'll go through this in 5 minutes, so we have at least like another 5-10 minutes for QA. Artoria's hair is yellow because she's a protagonist and she is supposed to be Prince Charming, just a gender bent version of that. I actually have a little tidbit about gender bent. Um, this Artorias gender bent has been was done by the creators of Artoria to be a story of a boy and a girl to sell more because originally Arthur and yeah in Fate, the original Fate, which is actual print King Arthur and a girl protagonist, did not sell well. um Artoria's story is tweaked here because when she pulled out Caliburn, she didn't want anyone to know her what her actual sex is, so she poses as a male to reign in Camelot. This caused obviously a lot of disdain, frustration to Arturia because at that time women were looked down in medieval times. Okay, back to history. Women were looked down upon as weak or unworthy to lead. Only a few in women. There are only a few non-weak women in Arthurian myth, like Morgana Le Fay, who's often villainized, or Lady Lake, who's someone very mythical. The gender bending movement started in the late 1900s in Japan. It tried to express sex without sexuality. And in ancient times, it expressed transcendent beauty. It is note that in Japan's history, homosexual relations are normal. It might have not been the norm, but it was not politicized or an issue in Japan until the 1990s, where there was an increased awareness in the spread of HIV and AIDS. Records in the 8th century AD show that some women cross-dressed as warriors in Japan. This was often looked down upon when they were caught, which is often reflected in Artoria's character. So there's a little tidbit about gender bending. Gilgamesh's hair is yellow because he represents power. Gold. His armor is gold because gold represents wealth, high status, heroism. He is the king of heroes. Arturia, king of knights. Blue. Blue is a symbolism of loyalty, of chivalry. Iskander's hair is red. When you have a character who has red hair, that usually says they have a very strong personality. And Alexander the Great has a very strong personality in history and in this show. White shirt. Why he's the only one not in armor because he wants to talk. White representing peace. He came there on peaceful terms just to talk things out. White also stands out, makes people look at me. So while Arturia has silver and blue, Gilgamesh has gold, Alexander the Great has white because he can stand out with the other kings. That's why it was great that someone said that they're very vibrant, but the background's dull. Another thing I like to point out is there are four kings, right? Arthur, Gilgamesh, Iskander. There is also the background. Peonies. Peonies are the king of flowers. More example, white peonies. Peonies would represent regality, beauty, being reserved. A lot of the Einsteins were very reserved, especially those born in, especially here Irisville, the master of Arturia in this, not shown in this panel, who has lilac white hair. So the peonies also reflect her. Another thing that the white peonies represent is forgiveness. Arturia is trying her best to reconcile herself with the wrong she'd done that caused Britain to fall. White peonies tries to show a recurring theme in the show is the guilt to trying to find forgiveness. You can see that in other characters, Kiritsugu, which is Artoria's master, Jarmud trying to reconcile with what is done by trying being a model knight. So the setting alone, yeah. Uh, Rocco made a good point. The castle where the bank takes place, a bit about power, the class that the three main families had, at least because it's Eisenburn. So what Irisville, the Einsburns had. The setting has a huge impact. The last thing I'd like to do because we're running out of time, sadly, is the position of these characters. The positioning of I yeah, they're in the center and it's in the screenshot, but it's always been like this throughout the show. Gilgamesh is on. We'll talk about character now. Characterization. Gilgamesh is yeah. This isn't Ainsburn homeland. This is just made in the outskirts. Gilgamesh is a king because all these kings are products of their time. Okay, last one. Then we go to QA. Gilgamesh. Uh, this is his old version before he lost Enkidu. Before he went down to the underworld. Gilgamesh was very arrogant, very much like Iskandar, who sits on his left, but to us he sits on the right. Artoria represents someone that's more a more modern take on leadership. Not the power is not on the king, and its responsibility to take care of his subjects, being magnanimous, being focusing on what the people want and not yourself, while the other kings would focus on themselves. Gilgamesh learns this lesson in his future self, his caster version, when he returns from the underworld after he sees the snake eat the herb that was supposed to bring back Enkidu. That's why Arturia sits on his right, which represents future, more modern. That's sits on his right, but our left because it's a more left leaning ideology. Uh, so the position of these characters and their characterization, I don't need to go over how each of them are. King of Knights, chivalrous, loyal. Alexander, boisterous, proud. Um, yeah, Gilgamesh is in the middle because he actually was both throughout his life, and he has that old thing that he is kind of divine, same as Iskander. Um, yeah, these things that set the tone. Just one panel. I could elaborate more, but We're really out of time. Uh, a few more hours, and we can actually discuss the politics, the philosophy, everything evolving around it. I just give you a little taste of what's going on because the purpose of this talk is that when you look at a single manga panel, a single manga page, a scene, a frame of a scene, everything is done with a purpose. Everything shows characterization. It shows um, the setting. It There is a tone that and a story has to convey with just its visuals. It doesn't need to. You don't need dialogue. That's why silent film at that time was really good. Sure, music, dialogue, etc., make things better, but you can know so much already just by looking at a single panel and a single frame. So that is it because we're out of time. Thanks everyone for listening. It's great.
Seeing as we're a bit out of time right now, we
Yeah.
might have to cut Q&A a little short.
Okay. Okay.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Dulce.
Yeah.
And I'll be posting the question links, the Slido links again for whoever wants to ask questions, and we can maybe handle that over chat instead.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Sorry. And with that, yeah, I thought it was a very interesting talk. I never really thought to analyze anime and manga that way, and I really hope that everyone else was able to learn a fair bit about the content involved, especially Fate Zero. I'm a really big fan of Fate, to be honest, and I never really thought about how color and the hairstyle plays into things like that. And not to mention historical parallels. I never thought about that with the paintings. And with that, yeah, thank you. We'll be posting the Slido links in chat and the evals links as well soon enough. But before we go a bit too overtime with presenting the next talk, I would like to introduce or talk a little bit about our next speaker. With our next speaker starting with supposedly we have Chad Ramos, editor-in-chief and of Raymaru Files, talking about Mecha through the generations. So a bit about the next speaker. Chad Ramos is the founder of the gaming and geek website The Raymaru Files. His love for gaming and giant robots made him pursue a career in the gaming industry, where he eventually became a game master, game analyst, marketing and media honcho, and esports and gaming event organizer in his career for 14 years. He is currently a consultant for gaming brands and event organizations. With Mecha, with this current talk that we're about to go through, Mecha Through the Generations, we're going to talk about how the mecha genre grew throughout the decades and how it evolved with different generations of fans, from creating new subgenres to embracing new media. We are going to take a look at how shows about giant robots fighting monsters can teach us about humanity. And with that, I would like to hand over the floor to our next speaker. You may have the floor.
Oh, hello. Hello, everyone. Sorry, medyo we're
Sorry
kind
for
of
the
late,
wait.
pero it's fine. We could proceed. I think I could share my screen right now. Hold up. Yan na lang. Wait. How do I... wait, let me switch to different file. Hold up. So yun, let me adjust. So, can everyone see na yun, yung presentation? Ayun. All right, so everyone, hello. And thank you for watching rin. And also thank you for Toshin for inviting me for this, for the Fandom February. So of course, we'll be talking about the mecha genre throughout the generations. Like we will have a quick look lang on how the genre evolved through the decades, like how it also reflects on the society from each generation and how the industry tried to evolve on how we know mecha today. So na lang, some quick introduction again. So yeah, of course, what is a Chad? So I am currently the editor-in-chief or founder of the Rainbow Files, the gaming website. And I've been involved with the gaming industry for 14 years. Like I started as a game master for a international game publisher and had involved with a lot of gaming events like ESGS, PGF, and Red Major before. And now I'm currently as a consultant working for other brands, helping out for their events. And of course, I really love video games since that's the reason why I created Rainbow Files. And of course, we have also a special segment on our website called Mecha Fridays, where we usually post about mecha topics every Friday. And if you're playing the most critically acclaimed MMORPG, Final Fantasy 14, I am playing there as a cat girl. Like 90% of the players there, actually. So yeah, and I had like a huge backlog of games. Like I'm still playing right now. Anyway, so let's do like a quick overview. So we'll be discussing like the origins, what is actually a mecha, the evolution for each of the decade, the pioneers that were involved, and how the genre evolved, and the influence it brought out to other media, as well as what we can see in the future for the next generation. It's all right. So let's take a quick look. What is a mecha? So if we try to look at the definition from Oxford, it's usually a noun. Like it's a large fighting machine in the shape of an animal or a person, usually controlled by a person who rides inside it. Or in Japan, it derived from the term mechanism or mechanical. And of course, some people would simply call it mechs or, robots. So this is a lot of people have been discussing or debating like which actually counts as a mecha. But as we see throughout the years how the genre evolved, we see a lot of categories. Like the most common thing here is, of course, giant robots. We see this a lot, especially with the older anime. And then we also have, of course, either it's being controlled or piloted, or sentient robots, which we know from the West, its most popular franchise, which is of course Transformers. And there are also other categories like androids, cyborgs, and also armored suits. Like technically, not really giant robot, but something like a armored machine of thing. So right. So if we take a look at the origin, like the very first reference of a mecha, we can see that the most early form of media or literature that was, describe something as a mecha is from this novel, this Team House by Jules Verne. And also, this is like over 100 years ago. So usually it's like described as a mechanical or steam powered animal. Like this one is elephant. Like usually it used to transport other materials or people. And then 8 years later, we have this novel called The War of the Worlds. I'm pretty sure a lot of watched this. I think in the early 2000s. So this was written by H.G. Wells, and the early description for this machine is usually a tripod or tripedal or three-legged machine, usually alien origin or something. And I think if you played games like Half-Life 2, you would see the references from that. So fast forward, if we go to Japan, like almost 100 years later, we see some really good beginnings here, especially with Osamu Tezuka, where he created Astro Boy, which is known in the West in that term, or Atom in Japan, or Mighty Atom. And technically, this is not a giant robot, but an android. So the discussion regarding if it's a mecha or not is, at least we know that cyborgs can count as a mecha. And then a couple of years later, or within the same year, we have Mitsuteru Yokohama creating Tetsujin 28, which is now we could say it's like a giant robot. And with that, we can see how it evolved through the generations, starting with the 60s, like how the humble beginning started, and then all the way to the present time in 2020s. Now, when we go to the 60s, this era has like anime was really popular at that time, or at the height, starting with the height of the popularity, when one of the biggest pop culture phenomenon there was tokusatsu, or shows with special effects. And one of the biggest highlights there were, of course, Godzilla, which was created by Tomoyuki Tanaka around the 1950s, actually, but he continued creating a lot of movies up until the 90s. And then we also have here Ultraman, that was launched around 1966, created by Eiji Tsuburaya, which is, of course, we know as Tsuburaya Productions. And at that time, the kaiju boom was at that height. And of course, the 60s also like post World War II, like almost 2 decades after the devastating impact on like the bombings in Hiroshima. So the creators, like we mentioned, like here with Yokohama and Osamu Tezuka, creating something as more of a narrative, or maybe the emphasis like when super weapons were being used in the wrong way. So it's like more reminding people that it's more on, we should be more focusing on peace and understanding. Hence, they created the likes of Astro Boy and Tetsujin 28. Like in the case for Tetsujin, it's more of a remote controlled robot. And at the time, there's no sort of tropes being established yet. So we can see here is there's no black and white in terms for, or actually there's no good and evil yet in terms for the robot itself, but rather on whoever controls the machine. So they're trying to push here that despite being a super weapon, they could be used for good, like protecting the innocent. And with that idea, it carried over like in the same period, they're shifting with inspirations between tokusatsu and anime. So we can see here that Giant Robo, also created by Yokohama, happened around the 60s. It focused more of a tokusatsu approach, but it also follows what they're trying to establish as a status quo for the mecha genre. So after the 60s, we now start with the 70s, of course. This is where the actual jumpstart for the genre. And here we see a lot of really popular anime, mecha anime, from the likes of Mazinger Z, Great Mazinger, you have Ograndizer, and more. And majority of them were created by this person called Go Nagai. And with that, it also borrowed a lot of influences from tokusatsu. And also on both sides, they shared a lot of inspiration. So the most recurring tropes here at this era is, of course, the monster of the week. Like every episode, we could see one monster or maybe kaiju attacking the city, and then the heroic robot will try to defeat it in one episode, or in some rare cases, could be like extended to two episodes. And then the narrative between good versus evil has been established. Like there's an invading group or evil organization being established that's threatening to rule the world. And in this case as well, a new trope was introduced in terms of mecha, where robots are now being piloted. From the likes before in the 60s, like Tetsujin 28, they're more on remote controlled outside of the machine. So now it's more focused on the pilot is inside the robot controlling it. And usually the profile for pilots is, of course, genius, highly trained, specialist kind of approach. Like they're one of the elite in terms of performance. And of course, since it's catered towards kids, uh, producers and toy manufacturers would focus on selling the toys. So every design of the mech shows and how the gimmicks would go should reflect on how it would become a toy product. And with that, it continues on with some examples, including, let's say, Get a Robot. If you remember Get a Robot being created by Ken Ishikawa, which still is a popular uh, series, as well as some new ongoing shows aside from Mazinger Z. So as it continues, it tries to use the same tropes all the time. So with that, after a few years, we were introduced with the Robot Romance trilogy, which added more depth to the story. So what the three new shows during that era added for the genre. So usually they added more depth, like stories, better stories, like more world building, backstories for villains, and so on. So it's also added like social commentaries. Like if you remember this, when Voltes 5 aired the Philippines, like in the 70s, like it was banned because it was claimed like excessive violence, but in reality, it has this themes of revolution on against dictatorship or any oppression. And also, both of these three shows also reflect on racism because, of course, there's like alien invading, Earth, and then how they oppress the Earthlings or the humans, and then how they also see on the side from this empire, evil empire, that has also social issues like discrimination on social rankings. And another good thing here is it also focused more on the story and not just on selling toys. Although uh, the three of this, Combator V and Voltus 5, introduce the more practical way of combining. Because in the early 70s, we see that Get a Robot started with the combiner trope, but Combator V and Voltus 5 created something that's more practical. It's easy for toy manufacturers to create toys that combine. And it also introduced like the importance of mech designers in the industry. Like before, there were no, you know, people in charge of design the mech to make it more practical or make it easier for animators to draw. And this is the era of the super robot, by the way. But there's one thing that happened at the end of the 1970s. And this also gave a shockwave in the genre to open up to a whole new experience. And that is this machine called Gundam. So in 1979, we see Mobile Suit Gundam premiered. And this introduced a whole new experience in terms of storytelling and how the animators or producers design their mechs. Like it's more realistic, I guess, and it has added more stories to it, like political drama or maybe soap opera. We could say like it's more. You could say that there's not just good and evil. It's not black and white. There's like a gray part in each faction. And with that, we go to the turn of the 1980s, where the real robot subgenre actually started to bloom. And at this rate, we could see that in the 80s, that the community, especially on the otakus or the anime fans, are being established. Like before in the 1970s or 60s, anime wasn't even like, something that really for fans to be really passionate. Like they just enjoy watching it. But here, they could go to the next level, like meeting up, building communities, making fan clubs, and more. And then also at the turn of this decade, we could see that a lot of the fans from the 60s and 70s are becoming the next generation of creators for this genre. Another also interesting part is how they created the stories, that they introduced different kinds of subgenres or tropes. Like, for example, in Macross, we could see how the term on idol groups blended well, or music blended well with mech genres. And in terms of isekai, I think one of the most popular, we can say that it started the trope for isekai is Aura Butler Dunbin or Dunbine, where this main protagonist was transported to a different world. And how they made this concept work in the mecha genre is really astounding, because how they would captivate the viewers with providing a different, or a refreshing take during this decade. And of course, since in terms of like the real robot is becoming more popular, it also reflects on the toy sales, because in some cases, some real robots aren't catered towards the younger audience. It's more focused now on the older ones, like the teenagers or the young professionals. Hence, the popularity of scale models or model kits, or particularly Gunpla in the Gundam franchise, started to become more popular. And also in terms for media, for in the 80s, it also introduced the direct to video. Usually these are the ones that being sold on VHS or VCRs that aren't publicly available on TV. So this means that more of the sales would go directly to the animation production studios. And also this gives more way for the producers to be more, I guess you could say, more risky, because it also aims towards becoming a much matured show. Just like you say that anime isn't just for kids. So we could see a lot of shows that are, I guess you say, more matured references. So 80s was really an interesting decade. Like a lot of stuff happened that makes it more appealing to wider audiences now. And since we're discussing about the real robot and super robot tropes, a lot of people are still confused at how you would distinguish between the two, especially in terms of narrative or in how they would make a story in different subgenres. So commonly we see real robots like Gundam, I guess Macross, and others similar to it. And then we can compare with the super robots with Mazinger Z, Voltes 5, Gao Gaigar, and more. Even Gurren Lagann counts as super robot. So usually in terms for real robots, we could see here that heroes aren't really invincible, or their machines aren't that really powerful. That they're also like grunt units that can easily be destroyed, lose their limbs, or in some cases, some heroes could die. And in terms for technology, like mumbo jumbo explanations on how this thing works, they are creating like world building here that convinced like there's a scientific explanation in or some sort in how their machines would work. Like, for example, in the Gundam world, the Minovsky particles are one of the bases on how it works. So there are like some explanations like they could detect units through the particles dispersion on space, etc. And then another part in storytelling is the conflict is not black and white. Like you can see both sides have the good side and the bad side. Like for example, if we put Mobile Suit Gundam as a case study here, the side for the Earth Federation has its Rotten Tomatoes, and then you could see at the part of the Principality of Zeon, they are really good people that doesn't want war. They just want to be free from from the shackles of being part of the federation that has corrupt government or some sort. So you can see the perspective of both sides. That you can see that none of them are really actual villains or heroes. Like in usual wars, we can see like there's some reasons behind how the conflict started. And of course, world building is another factor when creating in the real robot subgenre. Like for example, in Macross, like there's explanation why how it started in the first one with super dimensional fortress Macross, and then how they migrated outside of the Earth after what happened during the series. So there's a proper timeline explaining, and it also encourages the opening new possible series for that franchise. And in regards for Super Robot, like most of them are quite opposite from real robots. Of course, for number one here is the mechs or robots are indeed powerful. Like they have this godlike powers. Like one example is Getter Robot. Like they have different versions of Getter robots that are really godlike. Like they could eat up universe or galaxies from some sort of. So they could really do a lot of really crazy ideas for super robots. And of course, a lot of people love this kind of trope for super robots is the super cool moves. Like you would see your hero shouting out their special moves like laser sword, rocket punch, a lot. And the joke would come when the more intense you shout, the more powerful the attack would be. And the usual trope, of course, like what we mentioned a while ago in the 70s, the good versus evil setup. Like they keep on saying that this evil empire or organization is, really evil, that there has no good inside of them. Like it's more catered towards kids, like how you would see the moral values would compare. So if it's bad when this kind of tropes would go. And of course, in terms of story, it's more easy for everyone to pick up. So yeah, so usually for Super Robot, it's more on the action, as opposed with Real Robot more on the story or more on character development. But through the years, through the decades, both of them would complement with each other. That they would borrow concepts that usually break the barriers between the two. So in some cases, we could see some mechs in the Real Robot genre being powerful. Like we had this term called the plot armor, and we have characters that are really invincible or impossible to be killed, like for example Kira Jesus Yamato or something. So yeah, so through the years they would complement each other, and when asked which one is the best, we couldn't say, because it's more on how you would appreciate their forms. Like everyone can still enjoy both ways. All right, so let's go back on the 80s again. I think at this time we could remember that, especially for the for the thunders, for the titos out there in the 80s, we see that on the West they can see the impact on anime, that they would love to bring those into their audience, and in this case, a lot of hit or miss happened, but we remember some of them became cultural icons that still being remembered up to now, both in the West and in Japan. So in the 80s, we can see that they start to import mecha anime and they try to localize it to make it more appealing for their audience. This also means that there'll be changes on the actual story. So you would see some shows that are reshuffled their episodes just to create a different narrative or different approach in their story. So this is like a different take when localizing anime before. And take note, they don't even call anime it in the 80s in the West. Like you'll still call it as cartoons. And of course, they make it more kid friendly. Like even though uh, these anime at that time are already kid friendly, they still try to lower it, less blood, less on suggestive themes and other sort of. And this also brings some collaborative works with both, in different cultures for the East and the West. So some example we could say here is, of course, if you know Go Lion in Japan, you would probably heard about Voltron in the West or in the Philippines as well. And Voltron has two versions, which is the Vehicle and Lion Force. And these are two different anime that combine to one shared world or show in the US. Then we also have Super Dimensional Fortress of Macross, and then two other anime, Southern Cross and Mospeda, which was combined into one long series called Robotech. And pretty sure a lot of Mecha fans here know the backstory between this and how it finally concluded. I think like 2 years ago when it's now open for the license of Macross outside of Japan. And then other stuff like here, Ramrod, Bismarck from Japan, now called Saber Rider in the West. And then we have Tobikage, which is called Ninja Robots in its English form. And then lastly, as I mentioned about the collaborative works, we have toy brands such as Macross, of course, Diaclones, and other sort combined into one 30-minute long commercial called The Transformers. So yeah, so 80s is really one of the most interesting decade here as how it evolved and how it reflects on society. Like people are now established as being fans, and we can see that this is like trying out a new media with OAVs or OVAs, and it also leads for people to appreciate it outside of Japan, like how America or the West brought it to their area to be more appealing as cartoons. Now we go to the 90s. And now since we saw like opportunities being made for other anime to be seen in the West, but it doesn't reflect that, it doesn't make it anime at that time. The 90s really started the floodgates on bringing the actual anime in its original form into the West or even in our region, as we also appreciate it and became a worldwide hit. This also means that there are more experimental shows being made, more complex stories, and another fun part is super robots are making a return because in the 80s there were like a sudden decline because of the popularity of the real robot genre or subgenre. So one example in the 90s, of course, is what I put it on my slide here, Magic Knight Rare. It's technically a mouse audio tropes, or you could say with some RPG tropes, but with mecha. So one of the interesting blends here, and it also means that you don't need to stick on sci-fi to make a really good mecha show. You could go with steampunk, you could go fantasy with magical properties and sort of. And we had two big impacts that really establish anime as a worldwide phenomenon, especially in the mecha genre. So of course, we have Gundam Wing or Mobile Report Gundam Wing in some purists. This became popular, of course, with the girls because of the boy band setup we have 5 protagonists, and each of them has pilots and edgy personalities or sort of. And this also contributes on the toy sales because, of course, being say with Gundam, it also brings the model kits and other toys like action figures. So this was well received outside of Japan. Like it also become really popular here in the Philippines. Like even though we love uh Voltes 5 at the time, not all managed to watch it during those eras, like the younger ones during the 90s. So it's a good introduction for the mecha genre. And another interesting show here is, of course, Neon Genesis Evangelion, which added more complex stories with, more on the psychological and religious themes like in depression or other some sort. And this made the huge impact as well that it became a household name now outside of Japan. Like you or even in Japan, like you would see every day some brand collaborations from shaving creams, from what else? Bathroom products, from toys and etc. So it's really a successful franchise if you see random items being collaborated with them. Then after the 90s, we have the 2000s, at the turn of the new century. Also, for the 90s, we have a lot of really good shows like Gao Gaigar, which is more on a super robot, and it's part of the Brave series, which is like an attempt to bring back super robots back to its roots. And then we have a lot of really good anime in the 90s as well. But yeah, we have some short time here, so we can just proceed. We could, maybe if we have time, we could proceed. We could ask, I can answer some questions at the end of the presentation. So 2000s, the new century, the new millennium. This also means reinventing the genre that caters to a newer generations or new audience. This also means that some shows are being rebooted or having a spiritual reboot. Like one example here is for the Gundam franchise, they tried to create a new show that pays a homage to the original. So we have Gundam Seed that really reflects, like, it mirrors the similarities from the original 1970s Gundam. And then it also becoming more open now to the mainstream market. Like everyone who's not even a fan of the mecha genre would appreciate watching this. So this also means that they try to add more twist on the story. One good example here is Code Geass. Like they added like this anti-hero approach of narrative, and then of course pretty boy design style. So it also attracts different kinds of audience. Full Metal Panic also added a twist of rom-com that introduced also new audiences. And of course, producers didn't forget about their core audience, of course, the mecha fans. We have Studio, or actually Gainax, launching Gurren Lagann, or Gurren Lagann, which is one of the more popular now in terms of super robot. Like if you want the universe level of coolness, you would go for Gurren Lagann. And now, if we go to the 2010s and beyond, this also reflects on how it changes the genre. So, of course, in terms of visuals, it's more on HD now. We could see a lot of people, or actually a lot of producers, shifting to HD or higher definitions. So expect this, high quality, really detailed looks, very fluid animation, and also this introduces, or not really introduces, or this makes it see the CG animation more welcome because it also introduced new ways on making the action scenes for the mech really good, really satisfying. So they try to experiment on CG, like blending it with cell shaded visuals to make it blend with the hand drawn works. And also, this opens up for being digital. Like it's now open with, live stream services like Netflix, Crunchyroll, and more. Before in the 80s, we remember that they pushed the drive for OVAs for or direct to video. Like Usually, this would run for 4 to 8 episodes, or means in some cases just one-shot episodes. When they go digital now, it also introduced that kind of approach that producers could experiment on more shows that are risky, or something that's not appealing for free TV, that they could do it exclusively, or if they could get partnerships with big companies, they could complete their passion works. And sadly, this also reflects on the decline on the popularity, as there are more new tropes being introduced in the anime industry. I think one of them, that popularized the term is the trope on isekai. That's now, you can see every season or each season in this year or before that, like there are 5 or 4 isekai anime being aired. So there's like a change on the landscape in this era, that there's a new trope being, becoming mainstream. And doesn't mean that in the mecha genre it's dying, or phasing out. It's just that they're trying to reinvent it. Like we have some new shows being aired right now. Like we have a homage to tokusatsu with Gridman and Dynazenon, and then we have a lot of you can say retelling, or maybe expanding the lore for the Gundam franchise. Like we saw Gundam Thunderbolt, Gundam Origin, Gundam Hathaway, and even launching new shows like Iron Blooded Orphans, Build Fighters, Build Divers, and even the current The Witch from Mercury. And we also have some homage, or maybe a tribute for the classics, like we had Mazinger Z Infinity. And then we also have some really experimental shows like Darling the Franks and Night of Sidonia. So this new era will be more on experimenting again. And it also means that it's trying to check on the newer audience and what's the new trope. And I think with The Witch from Mercury, a lot of people are now interested again with the mecha genre, because on how the shock value on people watching the season finale, or in some episodes, that's really surprising for them. And usually for longtime fans, it's like a normal thing. So since we discussed about the evolution, I think we need to credit a lot, or most of the pioneers behind the genre. And I'm going to mention just a couple of them, because there's a lot of people that we need to credit. But since there are a lot of them, and aside from Osamu Tezuka and what do you call this, Yokoyama from Astro Boy and Tetsujin 28, we also need to credit this group of people. Like, of course, Go Nagai, who popularized the mecha genre with Mazinger Z. Then we have Tadao Nagahama, who's known for directing the Robot Romance trilogy, which we enjoy now with Voltes 5, Combattler V, and Daimos. And interesting enough, the producer of Voltes 5 was none other than Yoshiyuki Tomino, or in some of the fans would know him as the creator of Gundam, and the guy who also loves to have the term "kill them all," which makes a lot of protagonists die in their series. So he spearheaded the real robot genre or subgenre, and that continued on several decades. And then we have Shoji Kawamori, who pioneered a lot on the mecha designs and in transforming concepts, like how a fighter plane would transform from a bipedal machine to a real humanoid robot with macros. And he contributed a lot in terms of design, and he also the one who created the vision of Escaflowne. So he had involvement with Armored Core, if you guys are playing this classic game. And he has this involvement in designing Optimus Prime, the OG Optimus Prime in the Diaclone Toyland. Now we know it as, of course, in the West as Transformers.
Time check that we have a little less than 5 minutes right now. Q&A may have to be over chat.
All right, and then here we have Kunio Kawara, who gave the importance of mecha designing in the industry. So he also involved in Gundam, Daitron, Armored Trooper, and Gaugaigar. Then we have Masami Obari, who is known for becoming an animation director. And if you guys know this term, the sunrise sword pose, he's the man who made it popular. So he made these iconic heroic shots for mecha anime. Then we have Ichiro Itano, who innovated a lot in the animation style and inspired a lot of animators through the decades. So he's the one who made the term or popularized the term Itano Circus in Macross, where you would see a lot of missiles, trails of missiles running to certain targets, and the animation was just astounding or stunning at that time, even to now. And then, of course, lastly, we have Mr. Hideaki Anno, who created Neon Genesis Evangelion and the co-founder of Gainax. And right now, he is involved with Shin Godzilla, Shin Ultraman, and Shin Kamen Rider. We're almost at the end of it. And how this influenced a lot outside of different media and in different parts of the world. This created a lot of inspirations for video games, live action movies, even tabletops and comic books, or even in some cases, real life robots like the Asimo, if you guys remember Asimo. So of course, in the West, we have inspirations like BattleTech, and then we also get some designs or inspirations for the dreadnoughts in Warhammer 40K. And in terms of video games, we have Armored Core, and for some fans of the PlayStation era, Xenogears, and Xenoblade for the latest one. And how this would affect like in the future. So this also means that through the decades, we can see that a lot of from the producers and the creators try to innovate or reinvent the genre. So there's still a lot of room for innovation, not just even for storytelling, by the way, but also for the design, the mecha design, the animation, or even the characters themselves. So this is something that could be a good reminder for everyone that despite this running for 60 years, the genre 60 years, you could still reinvent the genre in some ways that you could in your imagination. And of course, this also means that the fans of the genre can become the next generation of creators, like how Hideaki Anno become one of the popular producers or creators in the genre, who was previously a fan of super robots before, and even tokusatsu. This also means that there will always be different kinds of audience in the mecha genre, as you could also try to mix up with different tropes. Like we see some mix on rom-coms, comedy, or parodies, or even isekai. It's more on how you would create a good story in this genre. And of course, the last thing that you could all say that everyone really digs cool robots. Like regardless on what gender are you or what age gap are you, as long as the design or the gimmicks are really good, you would really appreciate cool robots. And that's it for my presentation. So yeah, thank you everyone for dropping by. And you could also check my website at rainbowfiles.com. We have our Friday specials called Mega Fridays if you're looking for mega topics there.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, we may have to cut off Q&A, but before that, I would like to thank again Mr. Chad Ramos for their talk on Mecha Through the Generations before we move on to the next talk. Thank you very much.
Yeah, thank you.
For Q&A, we will have to answer over chat. I will be posting the link soon for evals and Q&A. Thank you. We'll send questions to you over chat again. Yeah. And with that, I would like to hand off the floor to my co-host, I believe. To my co-host to introduce the next talk. But I suppose while they're getting ready, I could just start introducing the next talk already. We'll be having a talk on events organizing for fun and profit. We'll
Hello?
be at, hello.
Oh,
You with
okay.
us?
Sorry. My mic wasn't working when I had my earphones on. Can I
Yeah.
just
All right.
connect?
You can have the floor.
Thank you.
Sorry. Thank you.
So I will be the host for the next two talks now. So I will be introducing our third speaker for today, who is Rochelle Dumlao, a producer in JPOP Manila. So a bit of an introduction on our speaker for this hour. Rochelle studied at the University of the Philippines, Diliman as a political science undergraduate. She was selected as a JAL scholar in 2000 and as a JASSO scholar at Suda University in 2001. While in Japan, Rochelle established the pop culture portal JPOP Manila, blogging about the latest news and various events she attended. After a lengthy stint in the Japanese gaming industry, in 2006, Rochelle moved to Singapore to join the organizers of Southeast Asia's biggest Japanese pop culture event, Anime Festival Asia. Rochelle has a level 2 Japanese language proficiency certificate and can now swear in Hokkien. Okay, so a bit of a description on the talk for today, which is events organizing for fun and profit. It is a casual sharing session by JPOP Manila, a Japanese pop culture portal based on Manila, Singapore, and Tokyo. This team will cover various topics and share their personal experiences with organizing ACG, anime culture gaming, events, both as a hobby and as a full-time career. So now I will hand the floor to our speaker. Thank you.
Thank you so much again to Toshin for having me. Once again, my name is Rochelle, and I'll be doing this quick sharing session on events organizing for fun and profit. So I'm sure a lot of people would be, very keen on this topic. So just a quick introduction. So again, once again, we are part of JPOP Manila, which is a multi-awarded, industry-renowned ACG portal. So over the years, since we were established in 2000, we've won several awards, such as, the Philippine Blog Awards. And also, we've been partnering with larger Philippine and Southeast Asian events, such as Cosplay Mania and Annual Festival Asia, for as long as we can remember, over 10 years now. So we're very proud of that. There is two of us running this outfit. So basically, it's an independent project being run by two of us. We're very passionate Japanese pop culture fans. For some reason, this hobby turned into a career for at least half of this team. So that's myself. My name is Rochelle. I'm a producer for a major Southeast Asian Japanese pop culture event. It's the biggest one in Southeast Asia, and we have events in Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand, Indonesia, Hong Kong, and Tokyo, and Japan. So the other half is a professional in the fintech industry, and basically she helps fund the entire thing. She has very deep pockets, and we're very thankful for that. Hi, Rael, if you're watching. So let's get to the meat of the topic, because we don't have much time, so we might as well get started. Oops. So events organizing for fun and profit. So, a lot of people want to put up events, but it all boils down to just basically two things, which is fun and profit. So the fun aspect is, we've all seen that meme wherein there's this guy who watches the show and he has no friends to talk to about how amazing it is. He's just sitting in this field of canola flowers in his chairs with himself and his feelings. So I suppose you all have heard of that, have seen that meme. So that's why some people put up events. They want to find like-minded individuals who share the same passion for the same topic. Could be a TV show, a comic, a video game, and they put up an event so that they can get all these like-minded people together and they can share their fandom with each other. The other is for profit. So, putting up an event is fun, but it also can cost quite a bit. So some people would like to kind of recoup their losses and turn their passion projects into something that's more profitable. So in this case, for example, if you've been doing the same fan run event for years and eventually you've gotten so big that you need to find a way to finance this long term. So you turn to, the more profit-orientated profit-oriented events. So for example, instead of just doing free events, you start charging admission. Instead of just doing free displays, you want to talk to exhibitors and you want them to come in with their products or with their sponsorship money. and all these other things that kind of take your passion project from just being something fun you do into something that becomes money generating, income generating, not just for yourself but also for other people. So next up, this is very simplified. It's just trying to break everything down into the basic principles, which is the 3 pillars of organizing events. So we try to break this down into 3 sections. That's content, logistics, and client servicing. So it's very self-explanatory. So content, what kind of content would you like to highlight in your event? Do you want to pursue bringing in industry people from your fandom? So it could be, if you want to bring someone from Marvel Comics, if you're into the Amikomi fandom, if you want to bring voice actors, if you want to bring producers, directors, animators from your favorite anime shows, or if you want to bring in directors, producers, and really popular game developers. Or for example, if you want to bring in musicians, bands, symphony orchestras to do all these performances from your fandom. Because currently, I don't know if you guys are aware, but bringing in symphony orchestras to do shows based on anime or games is a pretty big thing right now. So I hope you guys are aware. It's a very big topic right now in the industry. If you're not into such big ticket items, then you can also do fan events wherein all your guests are from the community itself. So you can do fan generated content such as dojinka. You can bring in all these independent music producers who do like the Vocaloid piece. Or if you want to do cosplayers, you want to bring them in to show off their stuff, or maybe do a bunch of lectures on how they cosplay. Or you can even bring in the new trend, which is virtual YouTubing. You can bring in the VTubers themselves and they can do guestings through the screen at your fan event. Now, after content, the second major consideration would be logistics. So it's the nitty-gritty, the not fun stuff. So when will you hold your event? Where would you like to host it? How much is this going to cost? Because at the end of it, even if you're doing it for fun, it does cost money. So how much will you be charging people who will be coming in to exhibit in your event? Will you be giving their tables away for free? Will you be asking for barter deals? Will you just be asking them outright for cash and using that for your logistics? So these are major considerations on how you're supposed to fund your event. Moving on, there's also the customer side. So how much are you charging tickets for? Is this a free event? Is this a ticketed event? What's the minimum cost that you can charge them? What's the maximum cost that you can charge them without people complaining about being way too expensive? So these are also logistics considerations that you have to keep in mind when you're setting up an event. And then the third pillar, it's not the last pillar, the third pillar is client servicing. So you're having to deal with a lot of people who may want things from you, such as sponsors or the guests who will be who you have to take care of, right? So who will be running the event on the ground? Will it be yourself? Will you have a team helping you client service? The tasks that have to be subdivided throughout the event. So there's a lot of different things going on. There's the stage side, the exhibition side, there's the ticketing side, there's the customer service side. So who will be running all of these tasks that you'll be subcontracting at other people? Because you can't handle everything as chief organizer. You're just setting yourself up to fail. And then finally, you need someone who will handle inquiries and complaints, because no matter how well you plan for events, things can and will go wrong, and there has to be a dedicated team or a dedicated person within your organization who will handle these inquiries and complaints. Because a lot of people seem to forget that, and from experience, we've encountered events wherein literally the whole thing is on fire, but there's no one we can complain to or we can ask, please help us solve this problem. So this is also a very important part of client servicing. So let's break down the 3 pillars further into, separate topics that we can discuss. By the way, if you have any questions, feel free to ask them in the chat. I hope some of our moderators will help me compile those questions later and we can discuss them one by one. I do hope to have at least 10 minutes later to answer all your questions. So, okay, so industry content versus fan content. So this actually is kind of like a chicken and egg problem. Like most, if not all, events have a limited budget. So even if you have a giant wish list of contents that you want to bring into your event to attract fans, there's always a limit to how far you can go. So if you want to do an industry content event, then you have to make sure you are ready to shell out. Let me put it bluntly, it's very expensive. Even the most deep-pocketed fans will have a hard time setting up their own fan event and invite industry people in. So I'm just telling you right now that you have to be realistic about these things. Do you want to invite a seiyuu? Do you want to invite the opening or ending theme artist? Do you want to invite the director or someone or the original author of the manga? Then you have to be prepared to shell out $50,000. And I'm using dollars because like this is how we gauge our events as, in the industry. It has to be in US dollars because it's the most stable currency. So you can peg the yen to it, the Sing dollar, the Philippine peso. So at least everyone is on the same page when it comes to costs. Because what if I say, oh, that's easy, I can afford 50,000 what? Peso, yen, Sing dollar, US dollar. So we have to have a standard. So in this case, you try to peg everything to the US dollar when you do your costing. And I'm just breaking it down now. I'm telling you guys, I'm not scaring you. I'm just being realistic. If you want to bring in industry content people, it's going to cost a pretty penny. But alternatively, if you're just starting out and you want to do a small fan event just to really celebrate your fandom, then fan contents are a great alternative. Because, fan artists, cosplayers, and influencers, they're already into this fandom. And they're also very passionate about the same thing you're passionate about. And more often than not, they're very willing and able to contribute to your event. So they will either appear or they will contribute, for fan artists, some of them contribute artwork. So this artwork is being used as event collaterals, as, advertising collaterals, the little design that you print on your ticket. So fan artists are sometimes very open about contributing this way. And some cosplayers, especially if they're into this fandom, they're very open with showing up in cosplay of your favorite characters. And then some of them are very happy to do it as like a professional guesting. So you have them as an official guest. And then you can sell more tickets to other fans that way because they say, oh, so-and-so cosplayer who's famous for doing this character is showing up at the fan event of something I love, then I'm definitely going to be there. So this is a very cost-effective, a very low-hanging fruit kind of deal, very realistic way to have guests and content in your event without having to break the bank. And then one other advantage of starting out with, fan content is, you're encouraging the community, you're highlighting fan content, you're showing the creative side of your fandom. So it's not just, famous seiyuu showing up for 5 minutes, saying hi, singing one song, and then leaving. So it's a more interactive way. It's a very community-driven way of having content. So, my suggestion is if this is your first time, if you're just starting out, then this would be a great way to get your foot in the, to dip your foot in the river, so to speak. So it's a great way to get started. Moving on, again, not fun stuff, logistics and budgeting. Because let's face it, we've had a lot of horror stories about event organizers who don't know the first thing about logistics and budgeting. They overpromise and underperform, and this results in a lot of disappointment in the community. So either the fans themselves are disappointed, or for example, if this event invited a guest and then the guest is disappointed, then the guest tells the other guest and it turns into one giant it just snowballs into negative publicity for the entire event. It's not a nice look. It's not a good look for the organizers. And then there's also the vendors, or for example the venue, the suppliers, because the organizer doesn't know the first thing about budgeting, these suppliers are shortchanged. And then again, this will turn out very badly for the organizer because vendors can always pull out. So they'll take down your stage, they'll pull out all their sound equipment, they will tear down all the exhibition buildup. So that's not great. So what I try to tell people, like when we have people who ask for our advice, there's usually two budgeting styles, which is you set a max limit and then you work your way backwards. Like, okay, I have $100,000 to work with. Who can I invite? What venue can I rent? How much can I sell tickets for so that this thing is cost effective? So that's working backwards. And the other is you start with a wish list and then you set your budget based on it. So for example, I want big name Seiyu to come to my show and do a 1-set 5-song concert. I know that she costs maybe $5,000 appearance fee plus hotel, flights, etc., etc. So I'm going to set my budget at this much. And then I'm going to add venue, and then I'm going to add equipment rentals and everything else. So that's how the other method works. So you create a wish list and you set your budget based on that. It's a personal choice if you want to go work backwards or work forwards. But the important thing is some numbers are kind of hard-coded into the system. So it's not exact, it's not an exact science, but mostly if you have a budget, okay, let's peg it at an imaginary number, $100,000. You should set aside 60% or $60,000 for production, 20% for hospitality, 20,000, and 20,000, 20%, 20,000 for services. So if you look at the screen, this is a quick breakdown of what production costs are, what hospitality costs are, and what services costs are. I'm highlighting it in this way because sometimes, especially newer events organizers, they tend to forget one of these three. Most of the time, they either tend to forget hospitality or services. Production is kind of a no-brainer. Everybody knows you need to do that. But some people forget that, oh, I need to book flights. Oh, flight prices vary depending on the time of year. Like, for example, we've had one event organizer experience that they thought that ticket prices were going to be $600 going and coming back from Japan to the country where they were organizing the event. What they didn't think of was that it was the Christmas season, and usually airline prices triple. So from $600, it became $1,200, $1,500, and that's way over budget because that's one person. But what if this person has an entourage? So it's 4 times 4 times 6 times 8. So you have to make sure that your hospitality costs are well accounted for. Also hotels. Hotel prices increase depending on the time of year. Local transport. Again, some people forget that you need to get your guests from the hotel to the venue and back. They're not going to walk. Even if they're next to each other, you can't have them walk because they might get mobbed by fans. So these are the things that some people forget. Now meals, we're Filipino, we don't forget meals. So meals are always accounted for in a Filipino setting. But yeah, we've heard of events in the United States where they forgot to purchase meals for the guests. So yeah, not a good look. And then moving on, services. So, even if you organize the event, sometimes you need a helping hand. You need a third party to handle these things for you. So one of them is a ticketing service, someone to, sell your tickets and take your money and pass you whatever you earn at the end of the day. And then there's manpower services, your crew, like who's going to man the booths, who's going to be the usher at the stage show, who's going to be, and by conjunction, security, who's going to be your bouncers backstage. Like you never know when an obsessive fan will try to sneak in backstage. So security has to be top notch, especially if you have industry guests. Yes, there have been horror stories. I will not elaborate, but there have been horror stories. So please take care of your security. Please make sure that your guests are well protected. I mean, even fandom guests like cosplayers and artists, they also have their fair share of unwanted attention. So really, security is also a fairly big concern when it comes to organizing events. Okay. So moving on, working with exhibitors and customers. So after laying all the groundwork, we still have the event day to get through. So you think you've planned for everything, but there's still, a few things that you need to get through during the event itself. So number one is who will be running the event on the ground. Let me get this out of the way. If you're an event organizer, you do not get to enjoy the event. I've had a lot of people get disillusioned with doing fandom events for their own fandoms, because at the end of the day, they realize, oh, I didn't even get to enjoy the event that I organized. But that is true, and we have to get that out of the way. We need to realize that, number one. So, which this leads us to number two, which tasks can be handed off to other people? So can you find people who you can trust to handle this task as well as you would if it was your job? Sometimes, we find out at the last minute that the person we thought we could trust really couldn't handle the job, and the event day is the last place you want to find out about this. So, you have to do your homework. You have to make sure that this person can be trusted, and you can hand off your baby to them. Please take care of my event. Please take care of my baby. So that sort of thing. And then finally, again, I also already stressed this previously, but who will handle events and who will handle inquiries and events? Because if you're too busy doing things like running your stage show or taking care of your sponsors and clients, then who's left to take care of the customers? And at the end of the day, we're doing this for our customers, our fellow fans, So we need to make sure that there's always someone for them to approach, and if not just help solve their problems, they're also there to take compliments. If someone is there to say, oh my god, I loved your event, I hope you're there again next year, then they're also there for our customers. Okay, the pitfalls of organizing, and it all breaks down into, you can't please everyone, but that's okay. So you need to have a healthy point of view. So number one, we have guest drama. And sometimes it's not even the guests starting the drama, it's their fans starting the drama on behalf of their guests. Like we've heard of this one event wherein the fan club of one artist complained that why was their artist not top billing when they were obviously the most popular artist in the lineup. Guys, let's prevent this sort of drama and just list them alphabetically. That's the most democratic way of doing it. Let's not do top billing, second billing, third billing. Just list them alphabetically. That's the least drama way of doing this. So you try to treat everyone as fairly as possible, make it as democratic as possible, and you stay out of fan politics. It's not your job to police them when they start getting into arguments. Which kind of segues into the second one, which is keyboard warriors. Yeah, we all have them. Not everyone is going to be happy with the way you organize your event, no matter how hard you try to make sure that everything is perfect for everyone. So, it's just someone behind the keyboard who is a bit loose with their... So just take it with a grain of salt. Don't take it too hard so much. If you really do need advice, it's better to approach someone who you trust, who you think is, a good example of who's done this before, for example, or is a good example in the community. Then you try to ask for their advice rather than, listening to what your naysayers have to say on Facebook or on Twitter. It is... Don't stress yourself with that. You don't need that kind of negativity in your life. Next up, logistics misses. Okay, I already have an example here, but let's try to turn this into a teaching moment. So earlier this evening, we've had a 20-minute technical delay. So that's a kind of a mess up. Just keep calm. Try to find out if you can fix it. So if it were me, okay, I'm just turning this into a teaching moment, but if it were me, I would have spoken to all of our speakers, tell them, okay, we're so sorry, but due to technical difficulties, we're 20 minutes behind schedule. We'd really appreciate it if you could help us by cutting your talk by 5 minutes, because, 5 minutes by 4 speakers, then that will definitely make up the 20 minutes we lost. And then after that, I will try to make sure to minimize the damage. I will make sure that the timing is being followed, that, if we need to speed up the speaker, we tell them, okay, you have so and so minutes left, if you could wrap up, or maybe if you could drop 1 or 2 slides and we can take it up later, or you can, or like, you send your slides as a PDF and you put it up on like academe.org and you share it to all your audience so that they can just take a look at the full deck later and you don't lose any time during the presentation. So these are all the other things that you can do to help minimize, the issues from one small thing snowballing and, creating a domino effect affecting the rest of your schedule, the rest of your program. Because at the end of the day, not everyone might be as flexible or as forgiving. So you try to be fair to everyone and try to make sure that, everything still tries to go according to plan, even though there are 1 or 2 hiccups along the way. And then finally, customer complaints. So once your event is said and done, eventually you will get a few complaints saying that, oh, I hated this. Oh, I hated that. Again, as I said, with your naysayers, figure out if these complaints are legit. Take it with a pinch of salt. Is it realistic, or is it just nitpicking, or is it just one very obsessed fan who's very upset that you didn't invite his favorite idol or something like that? So if it's a valid concern, like, let's pick an example. For example, they spent 4 hours in queue buying tickets. So that's obviously a ticketing issue. So what you do is you apologize, first of all, and then you try to make sure that it doesn't happen again. So that's really one big advice I would like to give. Apologize and make sure it doesn't happen again. What you can do is maybe next year you can find a different ticketing solution. Maybe you can split the ticketing. You can do half pre-sold, half on the day. You try to come up with practical solutions to make sure that that 4-hour wait for tickets doesn't happen again. One other thing is, for example, we've had this a lot especially in Philippine events. The schedule is delayed. It's because either the stage presentation, the guests didn't arrive on time, or perhaps there was a technical malfunction, or these things. Again, we try to apologize to the guests who kept waiting. They may probably already be in their seats, waving their light sticks, waiting for the guests to come out. We apologize to them, and then we try to make sure that, everything in the rest of the program is adjusted. And then next year, maybe we either not have that guest back, or we tell them, please arrive 1 hour before your slot. It's just risk management. It's just, making sure that if it happened before, try not to make it happen again. Because if this happens often enough, you're basically killing your event. Nobody's going to want to come to your event ever again. And then, you either lose your business, or it's not a lot of fun in this fandom anymore because people hate you. Yeah, sorry about that. Yeah, but it happens. Okay. So that's it. So as promised, I have 10 minutes left for you guys to ask questions, or if you want me to elaborate more on several instances that we've experienced when I talk about all these things, these problems that we've encountered, then maybe I can share a little bit, bit of a history lesson about all the previous events that have happened in the Philippines or even overseas that, didn't go according to plan.
Okay, so we have about a little over 20 minutes left for the Q&A. So if anyone has any questions.
Oh, no worries, no worries. I only need 10 minutes and we can end at 8 p.m. exactly.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
No worries, no worries.
Thank
Very
you.
sorry for
Okay,
the late
so,
start.
open the floor for questions.
We do have one question on the Slido right now from Anton. I'll just present it right now.
Sure.
If that's all right. What do you
Sure,
think
no
is the
worries.
earliest, most important task a planner should do for any event?
Figure out what you want to do. Because some fan events, okay, let's see. Let's pick an example. Okay, there was this one event that happened in the Philippines. and the organizers love this particular video game franchise. And then what happened was that they they wanted to hold an event for their video game franchise, but they didn't know what they wanted to do. So they invited all these people to show up as guests. And then these guests were like, what am I supposed to do at this event? Am I supposed to go on stage? Am I supposed to be a fan artist? Am I supposed to be a lecturer? So they invited all these people without briefing them exactly on what was the expectation, what was the ask. So in the end, it turned out to be just like one like a party where all these little cliques were talking to each other, and it wasn't really a fan event. Like there was no interaction. All these little cliques were just talking to each other, and they just kind of happened to be part of the same fandom. And then there was no program. There were no fan interactions. There was nothing. It turned into like a soiree instead of a fan event.
Oh, okay.
Sorry
Thank
about
you.
that.
So there's another question in the
Sure.
Slido.
Sorry.
So what is the most difficult part of planning an event?
The most difficult part of planning the event is actually the not sexy part, which is budgeting and logistics. Because even if you have a budget and then you have a logistics plan, certain things like a season. So like I said earlier, seasons can have an effect on the pricing. Or recently, COVID had an effect on pricing. Like things that used to cost this much is now 30-40% more expensive because of COVID. Like we used to be able to get certain things locally. Now we have to import them from overseas, and that costs money. And why? Because COVID. Like it was very difficult for local sources to get these things in. And now we have to rely on overseas providers to get them in. What other thing? Yeah, again, logistics, because it's very difficult also to shop around. Like for example, you have venue requirements, but the venue that is ideal is either too expensive or too far away, not practical for your guests to commute, or there are like certain things that are just not perfect for what you had in mind. So problem solving for the logistics side is the most difficult part.
Okay, thank you. There's a third question here.
Sure.
From
Keep them
Arthur.
coming. Yeah. If you want
Good.
tea, I'm also ready to give tea. Let me know.
Okay, thank you. So do planners also manage the event mid-run, or do they just manage the pre-event setup?
It depends on the organization. So for our company, we also do on the day as well as the planning. But because we're a small team of maybe 24 people, and our latest event, it was 140,000 guests. So we also had to subcontract other tasks to other teams. So we had to hire a different manpower company to do all the exhibitor booths. We have a different ticketing company to take care of our ticketing. And then we also had a security company to handle not just the bouncers and all the other security stuff backstage, but also at the front of the event, queue management, making sure that all the guests are orderly and, not picking fights with each other, that sort of thing.
Okay, thank you so much. I'll just wait for if there are any other extra questions in the Slido.
Oh, I have one question in the chat from Dr. Santos. Give a small scale example of an org or club activity. Okay, so this is a bit biased because I'm from the University of the Philippines, but we have a Japanese organization called Tomokai, Tomodachi Kaibigan. So what we used to do is we held a month-long organization event every July. And basically what happened is we would do two-prong events. One is cultural, and then the other one is pop culture. So the cultural side is we do speech contests, we do, yukata wearing sessions and all these cultural stuff. But in the pop culture side, we also hold like a small pop culture event. So we do anime screenings, we do anime sales wherein, because a lot of the members came from Japan, and we have our own small collections of items that, if we want to maybe sell them off, we would do like a garage sale or something like that. So these are all very small fan-run events or university level, not super big events. So there's a lot of avenues that you can explore actually. Okay, so any other questions?
There's another one in the slide though. So, when a
Sure.
problem happens during an event, what is
Mhm.
generally the first thing a planner should do?
Okay, the very first thing that the planner should do is listen. You have to talk to the customer. So, what is their issue? So, again, a real world example. So, in one of our recent events, we've had a artist alley. I hope you guys know what an artist alley is. It's like a collection of fan artists selling their original merchandise. So we've had one artist who has a pre-existing medical condition. So this is a bit serious. So they came to us and they said, "Oh, because of the way that the hall is structured, I'm very unwell because of the noise, the heat, and the sound pollution. So is there anything that you can do for me so that I don't suffer permanent medical consequences?" So this is a serious issue because it's medical. So the first thing we did is we listened to this person. We listed down all the issues that she's been having. And so, like I said, it was the heat, the noise, and the sound coming from all over. So we tried to come up with a solution for her. So first of all, what we said, like, let's see if we can lower the volume in the sound stage close to your area, if that will help. So we've consistently started lowering the volume, to the point that our stage manager said, "I cannot lower the volume any longer. No one can hear me if I lower it any longer." So of course that's the limit. So we told her, "Okay, we can't lower the sound any longer. Would you like instead to maybe step out of your booth and take a breather outside where there's less noise? You can stay in the medical area and you can take a rest there, and then when you're feeling ready enough, you can go back inside and man your artist booth." And so that worked for a while, but it wasn't a permanent solution because it's an event. There's a lot of noise going on inside. So finally, the solution that was found maybe the day later was there was an unoccupied booth in a separate section of the artist alley because the owner never showed up. So it was paid for and everything, but the owner never showed up. But this was in a quieter area of the artist alley. So what we managed to do is we helped her transfer all her stuff there. So it wasn't the ideal solution because it involves someone not showing up and not using their booth. But we try our best to make sure that our customers, not just our ticket buyers, but also our exhibitors, our sponsors, our artists, get the best experience out of their events as much as possible.
Thank you. It appears we have 3 more questions. I think this
Sure.
will be
Okay, we'll try to get them through in the next 2 minutes.
for this talk. Okay, so
Okay,
the
no
first
worries.
one of the 3 is, what is the promo schedule like for a big event like a convention?
I can't speak for everyone, but most companies in our industry, we take a year in advance. So, for example, we just finished 2022. Groundwork for 2023 is already started. We're already booking artists, making sure that their schedule is free for our event. Or we're already looking for new trends, like what's the new thing up and coming this year. So for the past 2-3 years, it was VTubers. What's the next big thing? Is it AI cosplayers? Is it AI art with the hot dog fingers? So we were kind of looking at all the new trends and finding one that is favorable for us as an event and also would service the community. Like it would be something that the fans would appreciate.
Okay, so the second question is, what would be more important, the venue of your convention or the quality of the facilities or merchandise available in your convention?
This one is difficult, and this is just my personal opinion as someone who's been working in the industry. I feel that venue is more important. Venue is more important because if your venue is not conducive to a good experience, no matter how well planned your event or how big your guests are, it's gonna suck. So, okay, fine. So I find this super big, super up and coming Seiyu who's willing to do my event for free. They will come, they will sing a song, they will say hi to their fans. I don't have to pay her a single cent. But if I put her in a place that's very bad, it will reflect badly on me as an organizer. And then she will never come back ever again. Or she will tell her other friends in Japan, don't go to this organizer, their facilities are shit. You will have a bad time. So for me, between the quality of the content and the quality of the venue, I feel that the venue is more important.
Thank
Because
you.
because you can always improve the quality of the content. But if the venue sucks, short of
Okay.
building my own venue, I can't do much.
Okay, yeah, based on an attendee of a convention last year, I agree with what you said. So, last question. Are there any
Sure.
tips you offer for communicating properly with consultants and other outsiders helping or participating in the event?
Ooh, get everything in writing. That's number one. Always have a contract. And make sure that the contract is easy enough to understand. It's not written in super legal language. Try to make it, as easy to understand as possible, because some people you deal with, like Japanese, they don't speak English that well. So the contract has to be simple. For example, you're inviting a Chinese cosplayer. The contract is in English. The contract has to be as simple. If you're talking to your subcontractors, like for example, you're hiring a team to do security for your event, have a contract, get everything in writing, and try to keep it as simple as possible so that there are no loopholes.
All right, I think that concludes this talk. Thank you so
Right.
much for being such an engaging speaker.
No worries, no worries. I'm happy that I got a lot of questions. That's aces.
Yes, really good questions too. Thank you to
Yeah.
all asked questions in the Slido.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for
Okay.
coming.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Good night, and hope you stay on for the rest of the.
Thank you
Okay.
very much for the advice.
Thank you for your time. That the evaluation form and the Q&A Slido link is both on Twitch and on the Zoom chat. And then second, I'd like to thank our media partners, which is arcadaimac.com, Filmation, Nihon Kyokai, The Reimaru Files, Mokowa Animation, Otaku Play PH, and Red Cloud Interactive. And another reminder that we have our final week, or our fourth week, is next Friday, and there will be 4 talks as well. So look forward to that. Thank you very much. And thank you very much for watching, and thank you very much to all the speakers for their time and their wisdom. And yes, thank you very much.
All right. Thank you.